Everything the Shen Group has achieved today is thanks to him, Caleb Gu. When Aurora Shen's voice spread across the banquet hall through the microphone, I was standing silently in the shadow of the last row, holding a glass of plain water. There was no chair for me. No nameplate. No one even asked why I was standing. 300 business guests applauded at the same time. Crystal chandeliers lit up everyone's smiling faces. The Shen Group executives in the front row stood one after another, looking toward the man at the center of the stage as if welcoming a hero. Caleb Gu wore a white suit and stood beside Aurora. There was a smile in his eyes. His humble posture was perfectly measured. And I had become the only unnecessary person at this celebration banquet. Aurora looked breathtaking tonight. Her black mermaid gown traced her graceful figure. Her fair shoulders and neck were exposed beneath the lights. Her long hair was elegantly pinned up, making her look gentle and dignified. She once held my arm tightly and said with deep affection, "Adrian, when the Shen Group gets through this crisis, we'll get married." I believed her completely. And that belief lasted 5 full years. I turned a project that had once been worthless into the core barrier of the Shen Group. I wrote 15 core patents one by one. I survived countless nights after midnight. I even worked myself into gastric bleeding. On the day of our engagement banquet, her parents patted my shoulder in public and said warmly that we were family from now on. I truly treated the Shen family as my own. But now, the position that should have belonged to me had been occupied by a male secretary. The applause that should have belonged to me had been placed in his hands. The big screen on stage lit up. When the first patent result appeared, my fingers tightened instantly. The paper cup in my hand was squeezed out of shape. Ice water overflowed down the side of the cup and slowly ran across the back of my hand. Patent name. Technical route. Application result. Every word was painfully familiar. Because those were the things I had derived line by line in the underground laboratory of the Shen Group. Second patent. Third. Fourth. The screen scrolled quickly. The applause rose higher and higher. Aurora turned, looked at Caleb with tenderness in her eyes, and smiled as if water could drip from her gaze. Once, I had naively believed that kind of look belonged only to me. She gently took Caleb's hand. Their fingers intertwined. Then she raised his hand high before everyone. Every one of these 15 core patents carries Caleb's hard work. The banquet hall instantly boiled over. Someone shouted, "Mr. Gu is young and promising." Someone laughed and flattered, "President Shen truly knows talent when she sees it." The Shen Group executives applauded too, their faces full of eagerness and excitement. As if they had no idea that on the inventor column of those patent certificates, 3 words were written clearly, Adrian Jean. I watched as the scan of a certificate flashed briefly at the lower right corner of the screen. For one instant, the certificate number and inventor line were enlarged on the projection. Then they were quickly covered by a beautifully designed promotional image. It happened so fast most people could not see clearly. But I saw it. Caleb saw it too. His gaze paused slightly. Then he looked toward my direction through the crowd. Across the lively room, he gave me a faint smile. The smile was light. But it felt like a loud slap across my face. He knew. He knew everything. "Caleb, say a few words." Aurora's voice turned sweet as she handed the microphone to him affectionately. Caleb accepted it and lowered his head with a modest smile. "Actually, I only did what I should have done." Such a simple sentence won even warmer applause from the entire room. My stomach twisted violently. A sour pain rose upward. My chest was full of anger, yet I could only hold it in, burning so hard my throat felt dry. What he should have done. Was his so-called duty walking into the laboratory every day with coffee, standing at the door while watching me work through the night? Was his duty taking the proposal I revised until 3 in the morning and reporting it to Aurora as his own achievement? Was his duty using his identity as her childhood friend to accompany her on business trips, to social events, and even to late-night meetings behind closed office doors after she and I were already engaged? I was not a fool. I had simply given Aurora chance after chance. She told me Caleb was only an old friend. She said he had no foundation in the Shen Group and needed someone to look after him. She also said I had a cold personality and offended people easily, so it was better for her to package the achievements publicly. She promised that after the celebration banquet, she would personally introduce me to everyone. She promised she would set the wedding date. She promised she would let me stand beside her openly. Again and again, I backed down. Until finally, inside this banquet hall, there was not even a seat for me. At that moment, someone came closer and lowered his voice. "Adrian, those patents are clearly yours." I did not look at the person reminding me. I stared at the pair standing shoulder to shoulder on stage and calmly took a sip of the water that had long gone cold. If she says they are his, then they are his. The person froze. Perhaps he thought I would rush onto the stage. Perhaps he thought I would roar in anger and tear everything apart in public. I did have that thought. I wanted to smash the cup in my hand into Caleb's face. I wanted to drag Aurora down and ask her what 5 years of love meant. What our engagement meant. What it meant that I had devoted half my life to the Shen Group. But when anger reaches its limit, it becomes silent. Because I suddenly understood that arguing was the cheapest thing in the world. The moment she pushed Caleb under the spotlight, the last bit of dignity between Aurora Shen and me had already disappeared. On stage, the host smiled brightly. "Next, let us welcome President Shen to announce the most important personnel appointment of the year." The hall instantly quieted. Caleb lowered his eyes, pretending not to know anything. But the way his fingers rubbed his cufflinks, and the smugness he could barely hide at the corner of his mouth, could not fool me. Aurora slowly picked up another gold-embossed document. From beginning to end, her gaze never landed on me. As if I did not exist. After board review and approval, starting today, Caleb Gu is officially promoted to Chief Technology Officer of the Shen Group. He will be fully responsible for core R&D and patent strategy. The words fell. Someone in the front row gasped. CTO. Chief Technology Officer. A male secretary who usually only sorted meeting minutes, accompanied the boss on business trips, and blocked drinks at banquets had suddenly become the Shen Group's CTO. My tongue pressed hard against my back teeth. The fury in my chest surged like killing intent, almost breaking through my reason. But Aurora clearly was not finished. She lifted her hand elegantly, signaling the room to be quiet. Her red lips curved into a soft smile. In addition, the Shen Group will grant Caleb Gu a 10% equity incentive. This time, even the Shen Group executives could not stay seated. Whispers started everywhere. People exchanged shocked looks. A 10% equity incentive was not a simple bonus. Not an ordinary promotion. It was a chip powerful enough to change who held influence inside the Shen Group. Yet Aurora acted as if she had not heard the noise around her. She smiled at Caleb, her eyes full of gentleness. "He is the most precious treasure of the Shen Group." Caleb's eyes reddened slightly. He turned naturally and hugged Aurora. The hug was too natural. So natural that it made my heart ache. Aurora did not avoid him. She even carefully patted his back, as if comforting a lover who had suffered great grievances. And at that moment, my engagement ring was still firmly on my finger. The silver-white band reflected cold light under the chandelier. I had personally chosen that ring. To buy us a wedding house, I sold my inherited share of the old Jean family home. To keep the Shen Group alive, I licensed my patents to them at a low price instead of starting my own company. For her one sentence, "I don't want to lose," I gave up almost every opportunity for my own name to appear in public. And this was her return to me. She erased me from the stage. Then handed my future to Caleb Gu without mercy. The applause was deafening. Every clap was like a foot stomping on my face. The person beside me whispered again, "Are you really not going to say something? After tonight, everyone will think Caleb Gu is the real technical core." I lowered my eyes and looked at the surface of the water shaking in my cup. My voice was calm. "Then let them think that." "Are you crazy?" the person blurted out. I smiled coldly. There was no warmth in it. Not everything can be used just because someone steals it. He heard the finality in my voice and said no more. I reached into the inner pocket of my suit and took out my phone. The screen lit up. Inside my pinned mailbox, several file copies lay quietly. Original patent application materials. RD log timestamps. Authorization agreements. And an email my lawyer had sent me 3 months earlier. The final line of the email was clear: if the Shen Group changes the technical lead without authorization, sublicenses the technology, or uses it for false publicity, Adrian Jean has the right to unilaterally terminate authorization and pursue liability for breach of contract. That clause was the final defense line I had left for myself. The price was laughable. I had protected my legal rights. But I had failed to protect that relationship. The cold light of the phone screen reflected on my face. I locked the files back into the encrypted folder. Now was not the time to act. I wanted Caleb to stand higher. I wanted Aurora to speak more grandly. I wanted the 300 business guests, the Shin Group executives, and every media outlet present to personally witness her lift a fake genius onto an altar. Then I would destroy that altar with my own hands. On stage, group photos began. Aurora stood in the center. Caleb stood on her right, his palm lightly resting at her waist. Flashes lit one after another like white flames, stinging the eyes. No one noticed me in the corner. No one noticed that I removed the engagement ring from my ring finger. When the ring left my skin, it left a faint mark. I looked at it for 2 seconds. Then casually tossed it into the silver ice bucket beside me. Ding! The sound was very, very light. So light it was completely swallowed by the applause. The passage near the door was dark and deep. It seemed like a different world from the brilliance of the banquet hall. Holding the unfinished glass of water, I turned and walked out. Passing the sign-in wall, I saw large golden letters. Shin Group Annual Celebration Banquet. Below was Aurora Shin's signature. Sharp and beautiful. Beside it was Caleb Gu's newly added name, pressed closely against hers, intimate enough to hurt the eyes. There was no Adrian Jean. I stopped and looked back one final time. On stage, Aurora smiled at the cameras. Caleb turned slightly and helped smooth the stray hair near her ear. The room remained lively. As if my departure meant nothing. Good. After tonight, they would understand what a person they ignored could take away. I walked out of the banquet hall and gently closed the door. All applause, laughter, and false congratulations were shut behind me. At the end of the corridor, the glass reflected my face. Calm to the point of coldness. I called my lawyer and said only one sentence: prepare the documents. At midnight tonight, withdraw every patent authorization from the Shin Group. Are you sure? The lawyer's voice came through the receiver. Around him, it was quiet except for rapid keyboard sounds. I walked toward the elevator. My dress shoes struck the marble floor again and again, clear as a countdown. I'm sure. Mr. Jean, if all 15 authorizations are withdrawn, the Shin Group's core product lines announced tonight will immediately lose legal basis for use. They will be in chaos tomorrow morning. That is exactly what I want. The other end stayed silent for 2 seconds. Then the lawyer stopped trying to persuade me. I'll draft the formal notice now. We'll verify the full evidence chain again after you return. If sent before midnight, there will be no issue with legal effect. The elevator doors slowly closed. The metal mirror reflected my face. No loss of control. No humiliation. Only a sharp, nearly painful clarity. When I returned to the Shin house, the wall clock had just passed 11. The living room still carried the scent of the fragrance Aurora liked. At the entrance were the heels she had changed out of before leaving. The pointed toes faced outward, as if she might return at any moment. On the shoe cabinet were invitation samples from the wedding planner. The gold-stamped names, Adrian Jean and Aurora Shin, sat side by side on the cover. I glanced at them, then flipped the invitation over. The white back faced up. Clean enough to hurt the eyes. I pushed open the study door. In the distance outside the window, the hotel's rooftop lights had not yet gone out. Across the night, they looked like a false celebration that refused to fade. The room was dark. Only after the computer screen lit up did cold white light fall over the desk. On the desk was a framed photo from our engagement banquet. Aurora wore a white dress and leaned against my shoulder, smiling gently. At that time, I thought I had finally gained a home. I thought once she wore the ring, she would truly walk beside me. I turned the frame face down. Click. As if locking these 5 years of illusion into darkness as well. The computer finished booting. I inserted the encrypted USB drive and entered the password. First layer. Second layer. At the third verification, the system required a fingerprint. I pressed my index finger down. The progress bar slid slowly. Folder after folder opened. 15 patent authorization agreements. Original RD logs. Experiment records. Email exchanges. Code version timestamps. Every document was like flesh cut from bone. It carried every midnight I survived, every painkiller I swallowed, every cold boxed meal I ate, and every time Aurora whispered over the phone, "Adrian, help me one more time. Just this once." I helped her again and again. Until finally, she erased my name from the celebration guest list, lifted Caleb Gu into the spotlight, and smiled as she declared him the Shin Group's most precious treasure. The mouse hovered over the first authorization agreement. My thoughts returned to the past. Back then, the Shin Group's capital chain had broken. Suppliers blocked the entrance downstairs and caused a scene. Aurora came to the laboratory with red eyes. She held back tears and stood quietly at the door. Her voice was hoarse. "If the Shin Group collapses, my parents' lifelong work will disappear." That night, I signed. The licensing fee was so low it was almost symbolic. I only asked for one condition: the Shin Group could not change the technical lead without permission. It could not engage in false publicity. It could not transfer the ownership of the technical achievements to a third party. Otherwise, I had the right to unilaterally terminate authorization. At the time, I was not unaware of the risk. I simply trusted her without reservation. Looking back now, trust is expensive as hell. I opened the newest text from my lawyer and checked every line carefully. Every clause was like a sharp blade. Silent, but capable of cutting deep. "Mr. Jean, the termination letter has been sent to your email," the lawyer messaged. "I suggest you send it first to the Shin Group's legal department, then file the online record simultaneously. The sending success timestamp will be the key." I replied with one word. "Okay." The second hand on the wall clock moved toward 11:57. I was not in a hurry. The more critical the moment, the calmer I had to be. I entered the names of all 15 patents into the termination notice attachment one by one. I verified the patent numbers, authorization agreement numbers, and signing dates. I detailed the breach facts. I attached screenshots of the public video from the celebration banquet. The press release announcing Caleb Gu as CTO. Aurora's live speech recording. The equity incentive announcement. Not one piece of evidence was missing. When the mouse moved over the send button, I suddenly smiled. There was no happiness in that smile. Only release. The release of someone who had been trampled into mud and finally found his hand resting steadily on the other side's lifeline. 5 years. That is enough. I whispered and pressed send. A notification popped up in the lower right corner. Email successfully sent to the Shin Group's legal department. Aurora Shin was copied. Time, 11:59 and 40 seconds p.m. I opened the online submission page of the National Intellectual Property Administration, logged in, and uploaded the authorization termination statement. The system refreshed slowly. The progress bar crawled forward like a snail. Outside the window, a car passed by the villa entrance. Its headlights swept through the curtain gap, leaving a short white mark across the desk. At exactly midnight, the page showed a receipt number. Submission successful. I stared at those 4 words for a long time. The stone pressing on my chest finally loosened by one corner. This was not victory yet. Only the first cut. But this cut was enough to wake the Shin Group through pain. Once authorization was withdrawn, the 3 core product lines the Shin Group was mass-producing would face infringement risk by tomorrow. Orders already signed would be impossible to deliver. Investment negotiations would need to be reassessed. The technical barrier they had praised to the sky tonight would turn into a claim letter hanging over their heads overnight. Did they like lifting Caleb Gu onto the altar? Then let that God fill the hole tomorrow. I printed every receipt and placed them one by one into a folder. The paper still carried the warmth of the printer. Its edges were sharp. One edge left a shallow cut across my finger. I did not avoid it. Compared with the past 5 years, this little pain was nothing. At 2 in the morning, the air in the study felt as heavy as stagnant water. My phone lit several times. People I had met at the banquet sent probing messages. "Adrian, why did you leave early tonight? Did President Shin have other arrangements? Does Caleb Gu really handle those patents? Why have I never heard of him before?" I replied to none. Until a name I had not called for a long time appeared on the screen. Claire 1. I looked at the name, my finger staying above the screen for nearly half a minute. 5 years ago, I had rejected her once. She brought me an investment agreement and said my technology should not be trapped inside the Shin Group. It should not be used as life support medicine for a family business. At that time, my eyes and heart were full of Aurora. I believed that once we married, the Shin Group and I would become one. No distinction. Claire had only said one sentence then. Adrian Jean, you will regret this. I did not listen. Now, I had paid the price. I dialed. After 7 rings, she answered. Adrian Jean? Her voice was hoarse from sleep, but there was no impatience. I walked to the window. The glass reflected the dark study behind me and the stack of patent authorization termination receipts on the desk. I'm ready. The other end went silent. I faintly heard cloth rustling, as if she had sat up. All of it? All of it. What about the Shen family? I looked down at the garden. I had personally chosen the design plan with Aurora. She once said our future children could run and play there. Now night wind passed through the empty white flower trellis, making it sway like a wedding that never began. Starting tonight, the Shen family has nothing to do with me. Claire's breathing was very soft. After a few seconds, she said, I waited 5 full years for that sentence. I did not respond. She did not continue asking. Her voice returned to its usual efficient tone. At 9 tomorrow morning, I'll send someone to pick you up. The laboratory is still reserved for you. The team never disbanded. But Adrian Jean, this time, you cannot be soft-hearted again. The corner of my mouth lifted faintly. I won't be. After hanging up, I closed the computer and locked the study door. That night, I could not sleep. I sat quietly in the chair and watched the night outside gradually fade. The sky slowly brightened. Near dawn, the last light on the hotel rooftop in the distance finally went out. The applause, champagne, camera flashes, and flattering praise from last night were like foam after the tide withdrew. Once gone, sharp reefs appeared beneath. At 8 the next morning, my phone rang like thunder in the silence. Aurora. I watched her name flash on the screen and waited quietly. Only when it was about to disconnect automatically did I answer slowly. Adrian. Her voice came with tears. Not wrong tears. Total panic. Her breathing was fast and chaotic. Beside her were messy footsteps and the sound of files being flipped. Where are you? Why did you send that notice to legal? Do you know the company is in complete chaos? I leaned back in the chair, my tone calm. I know. She clearly froze, as if choked by my answer. You know, and you still did this? Adrian, last night was my fault. I had a little too much to drink. Everything I said on stage was drunken talk. Don't take it to heart, okay? I listened to her rushed breathing and suddenly found the whole thing absurd. Drunken talk? Yes, all drunken talk. As if grabbing the final life-saving straw, she spoke quickly. I was under too much pressure yesterday. The media kept pushing. I just wanted to stabilize the situation first. Caleb just came back from overseas. He needed a proper title. I only gave him a name. Don't be angry. After this storm passes, I'll explain to everyone that the patents are yours. Caleb Gu's CTO title was Drunken Talk too. The phone went silent briefly. That was only temporary, and the 10% equity incentive was Drunken Talk. Adrian, listen to me. That was only an initial intention. It might not actually be given to him, and calling him the Shen Group's most precious treasure was also Drunken Talk. Aurora's crying immediately weakened. I could almost imagine how she looked at that moment. Perhaps she was still wearing last night's black dress. Her makeup had not been fully removed. The eyeshadow near her eyes had smeared. She stood in a conference room surrounded by the Shen Group's legal team and executives, realizing for the first time that I was no longer the man who would return if she coaxed me with a few gentle words. Adrian. Her voice softened. It carried the tenderness she had once used to control me best. Honey, everything last night was drunken talk. We are already engaged. The wedding date is almost set. You cannot destroy the Shen Group because of one misunderstanding. You were not like this before. You loved me most. Honey. That word left her mouth one night too late. I instinctively looked down at my ring finger. The ring was gone. Only a faint mark remained. Aurora Shen, last night in the banquet hall, I stood there until the end. From beginning to end, you never looked for me. She hurried to explain, I thought you didn't like that kind of event, so I didn't want to disturb you. Was having no seat also to avoid disturbing me? She was instantly speechless. I continued, no nameplate either. Adrian, and saying my patents were Caleb's, was that also to avoid disturbing me? At that moment, a man's lowered voice came from her side. It sounded like Caleb was saying something nearby. Aurora hurriedly covered the receiver. Her voice became muffled. Soon, she uncovered it. Don't target Caleb. He doesn't know anything. He was also thinking of the company. I could not help laughing aloud. This time, it was real, genuine release. Even now, her first reaction was still to protect him. Since everything depends on Caleb Gu, let him continue. No. Aurora finally panicked completely. Adrian, the Shen Group's core products cannot stop. We signed 2 major orders last night. The production lines must schedule output this morning. If you withdraw authorization now, suppliers, clients, and investors will all pursue responsibility. The board is already questioning me. Are you trying to force me to the end? I am only taking back what belongs to me. But the Shen Group is your future too. She cried harder. We are going to get married. My parents already accept you as their son-in-law. If you withdraw authorization, what will happen to the Shen family? What will happen to me? You have Caleb Gu, I said indifferently. She seemed to be slapped hard. For a long time, she could not speak. I continued, last night, in front of 300 guests, you said everything the Shen Group achieved was because of him. Since he is that capable, he should have prepared alternatives for those 15 patents long ago. Aurora's voice trembled. He is only responsible for external communication. The technical details need time. How much time? At least 3 months. Then stop production for 3 months. Her breathing suddenly stopped. I heard someone on her side gasp quietly. The Shen legal team had probably finally explained the consequences in detail. Then Aurora's voice collapsed completely. Adrian Jean, you cannot be this cruel. Cruel? I looked at the engagement photo on my desk. Then reached out and shoved it into the lowest drawer. Back when she handed 5 years of my work to Caleb, she never thought she was cruel. When she let me stand like a shadow in the back row of the banquet hall, she never felt even a trace of guilt. Now I was merely acting according to the contract. Yet she accused me of cruelty. Aurora Shen, in the adult world, even drunken words carry responsibility. After saying this, I hung up. The phone immediately vibrated again. Aurora. Shen Group Legal. Unknown numbers. One after another, like urgent alarms. I rejected them all and finally shut the phone down. The screen went dark. The study returned to silence. I stood and pulled open the curtains. Morning light rushed in like water, falling across the folder seal on the desk. The red stamp was painfully clear. I picked up my coat and left the study. As the door slowly closed behind me, I felt no emptiness. Only a long-lost ease and satisfaction. For 5 years, I no longer needed to clean up anyone else's mess. Just as I reached the stairs, the doorbell rang. Short and precise. It did not sound like a death knell. More like someone outside had arrived exactly on time, waiting for me to personally close the door on the past. I slowly went downstairs. Passing the entrance, Aurora's high heels still sat there. Their thin heels were like 2 sharp needles. Beside them, the wedding invitation sample I had flipped over remained with its white back facing upward. Like a judgment declared invalid before the wedding had even begun. I did not look at it again. I opened the door. Morning wind rushed in, carrying the damp smell of asphalt after rain. Claire Wen stood outside in a black suit, short hair tucked behind her ears. She held a tablet. Behind her was a dark gray business car. She saw me, her gaze lightly passing over my empty ring finger. She did not ask where the ring was. She only said calmly, at 9 sharp, the Shen Group will have its first accident. I glanced at my watch. 8:56, you're well informed. It's not that my news is fast. Claire handed me the tablet. It's that your cut was too precise. On the tablet was a real-time screenshot of the Shen Group's internal production dispatch system. Normally, the 8 production lines should have been green. Now, the top row had begun flashing red. I accepted the tablet. My fingers touched the cold metal edge. But I felt no chill. Instead, something suppressed inside my chest for 5 years slowly rose. This was not the emptiness after revenge. It was the steadiness of taking control of my life again. I got into the car. The door closed, cutting off the familiar fragrance of the Shen house. Claire sat beside me and propped the tablet between us. At 8 hours 59 minutes and 50 seconds, she asked softly, "Ready?" I stared at the jumping time on the screen and said slowly, "I've waited a long time for this moment." At exactly 9, the monitoring feed from the Shin Group headquarters production center appeared on the tablet. First came urgent phone rings. One landline rang. Then a second. Then the whole row of phones seemed to be switched on at once, sharp ringing breaking the calm before the morning meeting. Inside the dispatch center, project leaders and operations staff had just reached their desks with coffee. Before their cups were steady, red alerts popped across the main screen. Production authorization abnormal. Intellectual property license invalid. Core algorithm module call failed. A young employee's voice changed. Manager, line 3 stopped. Another stared at his computer anxiously. Not just line 3. Line 6 stopped too. The system says product compliance verification failed. The operations manager tried to remain calm. He adjusted his tie and reached for the phone. Call legal. Ask them what happened with that termination notice last night. President Shin said it was only a family matter. Restore production first. We cannot let the factory stop. As soon as he finished, the voice from the phone was put on speaker. The Shin legal department and patent agent sounded colder than machines. Do not restore. The usage rights for all 15 core patents were officially terminated at midnight. The receipt number is valid. Notice delivery is valid. Filing is valid. Continuing production would be knowing infringement. The dispatch center froze for 1 second. Then everyone's face changed. The operations manager gripped the phone until veins bulged on the back of his hand. Say that again? We have 3 shipments leaving this morning. If the production line stops, how do we explain this to clients? That is an operations issue. Legal's voice was icy. The legal opinion is one thing only: stop production immediately and seal current inventory. Otherwise, infringement damages, injunctions, and client claims will all come down together. But those are Adrian Jin's patents. He and President Shin are, I remind you, legal interrupted. This is not a couple's quarrel. Mr. Adrian Jin is not an employee of the Shin Group. He is the rights holder. That sentence landed like a heavy hammer. It shattered the final bit of luck in the production center. I leaned back in the seat and watched the people on the screen running around in panic. Last night, they had applauded Caleb. This morning, they did not even dare touch the machine start button. Claire turned her head and asked softly, "Does it feel good?" I did not smile. Too early. A true collapse is never just one explosion. It begins when the first screw loosens. Then the whole building starts making tiny cracking sounds. At 9:30, the Shin Group's operations back-end began showing pop-ups non-stop. All 8 core products had been removed from e-commerce and procurement platforms. The reasons were uniform, as if rehearsed in advance: intellectual property ownership risk, abnormal patent license status, supplier compliance proof invalid. In the operations department, the manager stood in the middle, sweat covering his forehead, his shirt soaked at the back. While answering phones, he shouted at the people at their computers, "Appeal. Appeal immediately. Send last night's celebration press release. Mr. Gu is already CTO. We have a technical source." A person at a computer answered with a trembling voice, "It's useless. They said a press release is not an authorization certificate." At that moment, another urgent call came in. Huacheng Group contact. The operations manager grabbed the lifeline and immediately put it on speaker. The voice from Huacheng Group was extremely polite, but left no room for negotiation. According to Clause 17 of the contract, if the supplier's core products contain major intellectual property defects, we have the right to unilaterally terminate the purchase order. Please confirm refund and penalty arrangements before noon today. The operations manager nearly crushed the receiver. We've worked together for 3 years. You cannot cancel all orders because of one letter. It is not one letter. The other side remained calm. Our legal department has verified that all 15 patent licenses have been terminated. Your company's public statements last night involved false ownership claims. We cannot assume joint risk. Someone in operations cursed under his breath. Then a person from the Foreign Trade Office rushed in holding a stack of papers, face as pale as ash. The export shipment has been detained. What? Customs notified us that it involves intellectual property protection filing risk. They will not release it for now. They require supplementary authorization documents from the rights holder. The operations manager swayed and grabbed the desk beside him. The desk tipped, scattering files across the floor. At that moment, Aurora finally appeared on the screen. She had changed into a white suit and redone her makeup. But the redness beneath her eyes could not be concealed. When she entered operations, her heels struck the floor fast and chaotic. There was none of last night's calm elegance. She asked loudly, "Which products can still be sold normally?" No one answered. Her gaze swept inch by inch over the room. Her voice rose. "I'm asking you. Which products can still be sold?" The operations manager swallowed. His voice was hoarse. "President Shen, none of them can avoid his patents." Aurora did not seem to understand. Not one. Beside her, the technical lead holding a laptop looked equally grim. The control modules, data calibration, energy-saving algorithms, and key structural parts of all 8 core products are covered by those 15 patents. On the surface, there are 8 products. But underneath, the entire framework was built by Adrian Jean. Aurora gripped the edge of the desk with both hands. Her fingertips turned white from force. Looking at her expression, I suddenly remembered how she had raised Caleb's hand last night and declared him the Shen Group's most precious treasure. Perhaps this was the first time she realized, the person she lifted onto the altar had no foundation beneath his feet. By 10:40, screenshots from the Shen internal group kept arriving on Claire's tablet. Suppliers requested shipment suspension. Bank risk control departments asked about operational risks. Investors demanded an emergency communication meeting. The media winds began shifting too. Last night, finance accounts had praised Caleb Gu as young and promising. This morning, their titles had changed. Shen Group core patent ownership under question. Is the newly appointed CTO worthy of the name? One night collapse after celebration banquet. Who really owns Shen Group's technical barrier? Claire looked at those headlines and smiled faintly. They're starting to dig. I lowered my head and adjusted my cuffs. They haven't dug deep enough yet. You have another card? Caleb dared stand on stage last night. I raised my eyes to the screen. He could not have wanted only fame. He must have touched something he shouldn't have. A light flashed in Claire's eyes. It was the excitement of a hunter smelling blood. I understood what she was waiting for. I was waiting for the same thing. This time, I was not only going to take back my patents. I was going to tear off Caleb Gu's gentle, harmless mask piece by piece. At 2 in the afternoon, the Shen Group's emergency board meeting began. The surveillance footage was shaky. Someone was probably filming secretly with a phone. Both sides of the long table were full. The atmosphere was suffocating. At the front, the big screen showed a stock curve plunging like a broken elevator. The drop had reached 63%. Red numbers filled half the screen. The CFO stood beside the projection, the laser pointer in his hand trembling. As of now, the company's market value has evaporated by $7.8 billion. All core products have suspended sales. Huachen Group has cancelled the annual purchase order. 3 export shipments have been detained. If we cannot restore legal authorization within 48 hours, at least 12 major contracts will trigger breach clauses. A Shen board director slammed the table. Didn't we say last night that Caleb Gu mastered the core technology? Where is he? Let him explain. Caleb was sitting on Aurora's right. Still the same gentle, jade-like face. But his lips were pale. Fine sweat had appeared on his forehead. Before him sat a temporary nameplate, CTO. The metal reflected light like a branding iron. Aurora instinctively looked at him. That look carried a plea for help, disbelief, and fear. The CFO gave them no breathing room. He continued reading. According to Technical Review, all of the Shen Group's core products rely 100% on Mr. Adrian Jin's 15 patents. There is no alternative plan. No backup authorization. No bypass design. The room exploded. 100%? Then what has the technical department been doing all this time? Haven't the RD reports always said Caleb Gu led everything? What were we celebrating last night? That we handed the company's lifeline to someone else? The technical lead was forced to stand. His face was iron blue. I'll tell the truth. Caleb Gu never led bottom-level RD. He handled reporting, communication, and packaging. The real bottom-level architecture was built piece by Adrian Jean over 5 years. Aurora lifted her head sharply. Why didn't you say that before? The technical lead looked at her with complicated eyes. I submitted technical risk reports 3 times. The first was returned. The second was changed to team achievement. The third time, Mr. Gu told me not to damage company unity. Caleb's face changed. Don't talk nonsense here. The technical lead no longer looked at him. He stared at the red numbers on the big screen. Once the authorization is withdrawn, we cannot sell even a screw. After this sentence, the meeting room fell into dead silence. I sat in the car, fingertips lightly rubbing the edge of the tablet. Last night's applause still seemed to echo in my ears. 300 people applauded warmly and pushed a fake genius onto the stage. Now, all that applause had become loud slaps landing across the Shen Group's own face. A board director looked coldly at Caleb. Mr. Gu, since you are Chief Technology Officer, tell us. Can we bypass Adrian Jin's patents? Caleb's throat moved. Theoretically, we can create alternative paths. The technical lead immediately asked, which path? Bypass the control logic? Rebuild the structural parts? What will you use to replace the data calibration model? Which parameter set will you use for the energy recovery algorithm? Questions rained on Caleb like shells. His fingers gripped the edge of the table. These still require the team to evaluate, the board director pressed. How long? The technical lead answered for him, if rebuilding from scratch, at least 5 years. And that assumes we can find someone at Adrian Jin's level. Someone in the room sucked in a breath. The director closed his eyes. His voice was cold. If we do not use his foundation, then this entire building must be rebuilt. Aurora sat there silently as color left her face inch by inch. Last night, she had stood under the spotlight, gentle and certain, as if she controlled the future of the entire Shen Group. Now she finally saw the truth. The man she had left in the last row without even a chair was not an accessory to the Shen Group. He was its foundation. Without him, all of the Shen Group's glory, orders, stock price, and ambition were nothing but a building on sand. Claire closed the tablet. Outside the car, sunlight was bright, making the city's glass curtain walls painful to look at. Adrian Jean, the laboratory is ready. The new company you've been thinking about can be registered today. I looked out the window. The ambition in my chest lit again like a furnace. Quiet. But burning hot. No need to rush the company name. What should we rush then? I turned toward the final image frozen on the tablet. Inside the meeting room, Aurora placed her last hope on Caleb. She grabbed his sleeve tightly, her voice trembling nothing like the president of the Shen Group. More like someone drowning. Caleb, tell them you have a way. You do, right? Caleb opened his mouth. Everyone in the room waited for his answer. But he could not give one. By the third second of silence, the atmosphere in the room changed instantly. Everyone had been waiting for him to speak, like waiting for a rope that could drag a sinking ship back to shore. But his throat moved twice. He squeezed out only one sentence, I need time. The conference room was so quiet the hum of the air conditioner could be heard. Caleb's, I need time, fell like a stone into a dry well, not even making an echo. Aurora's fingers slowly loosened from his sleeve. They still held the shape of effort, like she had been gripping for a long time only to find she held nothing but air. A board director leaned back, removed his glasses, and wiped the lenses. His tone became strangely calm. Mr. Gu, when you said theoretically there are alternative paths, does theoretically mean waiting for Adrian Jean to soften, or waiting for you to find open source code online? It was poisonous enough that several technical employees nearly failed to suppress their expressions. Caleb's face first flushed, then turned pale, as if scalding water had been poured down his throat. He stood. His suit button scraped the edge of the table. He froze there. Director Wang, please don't speak like that. My resume and technical background were reviewed by the board. Your resume says you once served as a senior researcher at an overseas laboratory. The technical lead flipped through the folder in front of him. But I had someone check that lab's public papers and project records yesterday. In 5 years, you participated in only 2 signed papers. And you were third author on both. Your main research direction was materials characterization. It has nothing to do with the Shen Group's current control algorithms, data calibration, or structural optimization. The strike was precise. Caleb's fingertips tightened. Veins jumped faintly beneath his cuff. He turned toward Aurora. That gaze was both asking for help and asking her to speak for him. But Aurora avoided his eyes. Her hands were folded on the table, nails digging deeply into her palms. Director Wang. She finally spoke, her voice hoarse. This is not the time to pursue the past. The urgent task is to recover losses. I have already asked legal to contact Adrian Jean. Have you reached him? Aurora's lips pressed into a line. His phone is off, the CFO answered. Starting at 8:40 this morning, all his numbers have been unreachable. The law firm replied that communication is currently inconvenient. On the intellectual property filing system, the termination statement has taken effect and cannot be withdrawn. Director Wang put his glasses back on. The red numbers on the screen reflected in his lenses, making his face difficult to read. Aurora, you personally signed last night's celebration plan. You personally announced Caleb Gu's appointment. You personally unified the publicity wording for the 15 patents. The board did not interfere with your decision because you said Caleb Gu could bring a technical breakthrough. Aurora's shoulders trembled faintly. And now? The director's voice was not heavy, but every word landed like a chisel. At 9 this morning, production stopped. At 10, orders were cancelled. At 11, 7.8 billion in market value evaporated. At noon, the bank called my home. And now you tell me, what exactly can Caleb Gu do? Dozens of eyes in the room turned to Caleb. He finally moved. He raised a hand and loosened his tie. His throat rolled. Give me 3 months. I can build a temporary alternative architecture. 3 months. The technical lead cut him off. Do you think you can rebuild core control logic with a few PowerPoint slides? Do you know Adrian Jin's algorithm is supported by more than 300 iterative experiments? Do you know he once stayed awake 48 straight hours adjusting parameters to solve the energy consumption paradox? Didn't you just say at least 5 years? That is for a complete plan. The technical lead's tone was hard. Something made in 3 months, how is that different from a defective product? Do you plan to let clients use defective products? Or wait until an accident happens and make the Shen Group carry responsibility? Caleb was forced into the corner. His voice suddenly rose. You are all forcing me. These were his patents to begin with. Why didn't you say this when you put me on stage last night? The moment this sentence left his mouth, the air froze. He realized he had misspoken. His pupils contracted. Then he tried to correct himself. I mean, technical achievements do require team collaboration. Aurora turned sharply to look at him. That look held shock, doubt, and something breaking. Director Wang gently pushed his glasses. Mr. Gu, are you admitting yourself that those patents do not belong to you? I'm not. Then when you said, his patents, who were you referring to? Caleb's lips trembled twice. He said nothing. He lowered his head and gripped the metal nameplate before him, his fingertips pressed against the letters, CTO, as if trying to scrape them off. When the tablet screen went dark, Claire looked away from it and toward me. The car was quiet. Only the low sound of air conditioning remained. She did not ask how I felt. She simply put the tablet away. The progress is faster than expected. Because the foundation was loose to begin with. I said, I merely pulled away the soil beneath it. What next? The Shen Group will still send people to find you. Let them. Claire studied me for a few seconds, then suddenly smiled. You've changed. Where? 5 years ago, when you sat in front of me to discuss cooperation, everything you said was about what Aurora Shen needed and what the Shen Group needed. Today, sitting here, everything you say is about what Adrian Jean wants. I did not answer. I turned and looked out the window. The business car passed over an elevated bridge. Below was the city's busiest commercial district. On a glass curtain wall, the golden words, Shen Group Tower, reflected sunlight. From my angle, the bridge pier cut those words in half. Only the latter half seemed to hang in midair. Go to the laboratory, I said. The business car stopped at a creative industrial park in the south of the city. I had not come here in 5 years. The entrance turnstile had been replaced. The security guards had changed too. But Claire handed over a card, and the gate turned green. Crossing the courtyard, I saw the old factory building that had once been turned into a warehouse. The glass doors were newly installed. Inside came the low hum of running equipment. At the entrance hung an unnamed metal plaque. You said the team never disbanded? The 4 core members are still here. Claire pushed open the door. They knew you would come back sooner or later. There were 3 people in the laboratory. 1 was adjusting equipment. 2 were bent over screens, arguing over data. The moment the door opened, all 3 looked up at once, so neatly it was as if they had been trained. The buzz-cut man at the front froze. Then he threw the wrench in his hand onto the table. "Engineer Gene!" That shout made the laboratory come alive. He rushed over in 3 strides, wiped his hand on his pants, and then shook mine. "President Wen said you would come back. We waited 5 years. You didn't touch my equipment in 5 years? We touched it." He grinned. "But we didn't dare touch the core parameters. The logs you left behind, we backed up 3 copies. President Wen said these things would be useful one day." I looked across the instruments. Oscilloscopes. Signal generators. High-precision power supplies. All models I had personally chosen back then. Several handwritten notes were spread on the desk. The paper edges were curled from wear. The page corners had creases from repeated reading. Another person stood. Early 30s. Black frame glasses. A pen still in his hand. "Engineer Gene, that 3rd-generation energy optimization model of yours, we tried deriving it several times, but got stuck at load balancing. Could you explain it again?" He asked cautiously, as if afraid I would refuse. I looked at the notes in his hand. The creases carried pencil annotations, messy but serious. "Give me the parameter table on page 5. He immediately flipped to that page and handed it over. I scanned it and pointed to the lower right corner. "Here. Your upper threshold is too high. Return to the original value and adjust the feedback loop gain coefficient to 0.3. 0.3? His eyes lit up. "I tried 0.5 before, 0.5 overshoots." Without another word, he ran back to the computer and began typing rapidly. Claire stood beside me without interrupting. She simply watched the laboratory come back to life. The beeping of instruments. Keyboard clatter. Someone occasionally calling, "Engineer Gene, look at this waveform." These sounds gathered like a heart stopped for 5 years beginning to beat again. At 4 in the afternoon, I turned my phone back on. Missed calls and texts rushed in like an avalanche. Aurora had called 37 times. The Shun legal department 19 times. Countless unknown numbers. The newest texts were from Aurora's mother. "Adrian, did you and Aurora have a fight? What can't be discussed properly? She drank too much last night. Don't hold it against her. I know you are a good child. If you destroy the Shun group, what will happen to our family?" The second was a voice message. I tapped it. Her mother's voice was breathless, as if she had cried. "Adrian, Auntie will kneel to you, all right? Even if not for Aurora, think of the 5 years we spent together. Restore the authorization. Auntie will make the decision for you. I'll separate them. We don't want Caleb anymore. Come back, okay?" I did not reply. I turned the phone face down on the table. With the screen hidden, those pleas could not be seen. Claire placed a cup of water beside me. "When are you going to meet them? When they truly feel pain. This doesn't count. This is only panic." I took a sip. When people panic, they say nice things. They beg. They admit mistakes. But once they recover, the first thing they think about is how to take the thing back. I want them to understand this cannot be regained by begging. At 7 that evening, word spread through the circle that the Shun group had called another emergency meeting. Claire's channels were half a step faster than the media. What came to her tablet was not an official release, but an audio clip recorded by an executive between sessions. In the recording, Aurora's voice went from panic to urgency, then almost pleading. "Elders, I know this was my decision-making mistake. But Adrian and I are engaged. There are still feelings between us. I will personally find him. I will definitely persuade him back." A Shun board director's voice was calm. "Aurora, first explain why Caleb Gu's appointment file included a technical evaluation report. Who signed it?" Silence lasted several seconds. Then someone cleared his throat. It was the technical lead, hesitant at first. "That evaluation report was prepared by Mr. Gu himself. It listed the technical ownership explanation for all 15 patents, saying they were led by Caleb Gu. I raised objections then, but President Shun said to use this wording publicly first and adjust it later." Aurora's voice exploded. "When did you object?" "Last December, I sent an email." The technical lead's tone hardened. Subject: patent ownership description inconsistent with facts. President Shun replied with 2 words, "Noted." I can still pull up the email record. A chair scraped loudly in the meeting room. Someone asked, "Aurora, did you see that email? I receive too many emails every day. So you approved a false technical ownership publicity plan without even reading it? The recording cut off there. Claire took the tablet back. If this audio leaks further, the Shin Group's credit rating may fall too. The board doesn't just want a solution anymore. They want accountability. She asked, Aurora will come find you tonight. Will you see her? I leaned back in the chair. The laboratory lights shone down from above, making the notes on the desk extremely clear. Just now, I had added several formulas. The team had gathered around me, eyes shining. That was the light only true technical people had when they saw a breakthrough. After staying here for 5 hours, I had found the version of myself that the Shin Group had deliberately suppressed for years. I'll see her. But not at the Shin house. Not at the Shin Group. Let her come here. At 9:40 that night, the lights at the park entrance stretched two shadows very long. Aurora drove herself over. From getting out of the car to reaching the laboratory door, the distance was not far. But she walked for nearly 2 minutes. Her high heels tapped against the stone path, the sound broken by the night wind. When she pushed open the door, I was adjusting oscilloscope parameters with my back to the entrance. The buzz-cut man handed me tools. Hearing footsteps, he looked up once, then lowered his head and continued. Claire had already told everyone in advance, do what you should. No one needed to make way for anyone. Adrian. Aurora's voice came from behind me. It was steadier than on the phone that morning. I turned. She stood in the circle of light near the door. She had changed into a dark blue dress. Her hair was down, resting on her shoulders. Her makeup was delicate, but the swelling beneath her eyes could not be hidden. The color of her lipstick was heavier than usual, as if she deliberately used color to press down her paleness. She held nothing. Her fingers clutched the chain of her handbag so tightly it dug into her skin. This is your old laboratory? She looked around. Her gaze passed over the equipment and notes, finally landing on the stack of parameter papers on the desk. Newly written formulas covered the pages. The ink had not dried. I thought you and Claire were only having a simple talk. We talked, I said, putting the oscilloscope probe back on the rack. Then what? Aurora took one step forward. The crisp strike of her heel on the concrete floor sounded especially clear in the empty laboratory. Adrian, I came to take you home. My mother said you may have heard her message. She was right. I drank too much. My mind was muddled. You know how much I have relied on you these 5 years. Without you, the Shin Group cannot even survive one day. Tonight, I truly understood that. Last night on stage, you said everything the Shin Group had achieved was because of Caleb Gu. That was my mistake. When she said it, her lips trembled slightly. I know I was wrong. You can ask me to apologize however you want. I can clarify before the media. I can hold another press conference. I can put your name at the front of every patent. I can even fire Caleb Gu. I can make him leave the Shin Group and never appear before you again. The laboratory was quiet for a moment. The buzz-cut man lowered his head and wiped a wrench. The man with glasses pretended to study waveforms on the screen, but his ears were clearly raised. I slowly walked to the desk and picked up the new formula pages. I flipped through two, not lifting my head. What about Caleb Gu's 10% equity incentive? Cancelled. What about the CTO position? Revoked. What about the celebration banquet speech video? She froze. That can also be handled, and then? I placed the papers down and looked at her. You want everyone to pretend last night never happened? 300 guests. Dozens of media outlets. The entire industry. Do they all lose their memory? Aurora's face paled. I can issue a statement saying the technical ownership was incorrect. I will personally say the real inventor is you, as president of the Shin Group. Good. I nodded. Post it now. Her lips moved. Now? Adrian, statements need legal review. You just said you would apologize however I wanted. But statements need procedure, Aurora Shin. I interrupted her. My tone was slow and steady. You did not come here tonight to apologize. You came to ask for authorization. Apology is the price you are willing to pay to get the authorization back. And you want to pay the smallest price for the biggest return. Her lashes trembled. Her eyes reddened again. Adrian, you cannot think of me like that. Our 5 years were not fake. The patents are not fake either. I pointed toward the instruments on the desk. Everything in this laboratory was built by me from nothing. 5 years ago, you said the Shin Group needed me. I believed you. Last night, you said Caleb Gu was the Shin Group's treasure. I believed you too. Every time you needed me, what you said was true. After using me, it stopped counting, right? Aurora's tears finally fell. Large drops hit the chain of her handbag, making tiny sounds. She did not raise a hand to wipe them. She stood there, letting tears flow through her delicate blush. Under the laboratory light, they shone brightly. Adrian, I beg you. The workers of the Shin Group are waiting to resume work. Suppliers are demanding payment. Banks are freezing credit lines. Even if you only think of those innocent employees. I asked back. What about me? For 5 years, I was hidden backstage by you. My name was erased from every patent publicity material. At the celebration banquet, I did not even have a chair. What do I count as? She reached out to grab my arm. I stepped aside. Her fingers cut through empty air and froze there, curled slightly. That dodge hurt her more than any spoken rejection. Aurora finally stopped speaking. She only bit her lower lip and stood there, shoulders shaking as she sobbed. She waited for a long time. Waiting for me to soften as I had countless times before. But today was different. In this laboratory, no one spoke for her. No one handed her tissues. No one smoothed things over. The team that had once carried her in its palms was now simply working in silence. The door closed softly behind Aurora after she left. When she was gone, the air in the lab flowed again. The buzz-cut man set down the wrench and said quietly without lifting his head, "Engineer Jean, you weren't like this before." What was I like before? Before, if she poked a hole in the sky, you would repair it for her overnight. He smiled faintly. There was emotion in his tone, not blame. Now you're letting her fix it herself. I did not answer. I returned to the oscilloscope and carefully examined the waveform again. The curve on the screen was smooth, clean, and stable. Just like my heart at that moment. 3 days after Aurora left, the situation completely lost control. The Shin Group's stock price fell to the suspension warning line. 3 core suppliers officially issued letters terminating long-term contracts. Huachin Group had submitted its penalty claim to court. The amount was 30% of the annual order value. More fatal than that, the government support funds the Shin Group had obtained using patent authorization documents were suspended for audit. They were required to provide the rights holders qualification proof within a time limit. I sat in my newly rented office. 3 documents lay before me. The first was the business license of Shinyan Technology. The legal representative was me. Registered capital, 30 million. Claire Wen held 25%. The rest was mine. The second was Claire's drafted first-round financing term sheet. 3 investment institutions were waiting in line to sign. The valuation had opened at 1.2 billion. 5 years ago, that number would have been enough to buy half the Shin Group. The third was the case filing notice my lawyer sent for an infringement lawsuit. After authorization was terminated, the Shin Group still tried to produce 3 batches of goods. Every batch was ironclad evidence. Do you want to sue now or wait? Claire asked from the chair across from me, spinning a pen in her hand. Wait. For what? For Caleb Gu to lose patience. I stacked the 3 documents neatly and placed them in the drawer. His 10% equity incentive was orally cancelled by the board, but the business change procedure has not finished. Aurora cannot stir internal chaos while the stock price is collapsing. He will try to run. Claire raised an eyebrow. You think he'll flee with money? He has no other path. I said, his technical fraud has been exposed. The Shin Group won't hold for long. His name in this industry is ruined. Given Caleb's character, he will definitely leave himself an escape route before the collapse. Facts proved me right. The next morning, my lawyer sent news. A large transfer had occurred in a private account under Caleb Gu's name the previous afternoon. The recipient was a shell company in the Cayman Islands. The amount was not huge. 12 million. But for a secretary who had been with the company less than 3 years, that number itself said everything. Investigate the source of that money, I said into the phone. We're already investigating. But Mr. Jean, if this transfer is connected to Shin Group internal funds, it may not be ordinary embezzlement. It may involve criminal charges. I know. After hanging up, I opened a forgotten corner of the Shin Group's internal system. 5 years ago, I had built their data middle platform. Every financial transaction had back-end logs. At the time, Aurora's IT manager said the system was too transparent and suggested turning off some permissions. But I left a backdoor. Back then, it was to protect my own patent dividends from being manipulated. Now, it served another purpose. I spent 20 minutes searching Caleb's reimbursement records, project bonuses, and special approval forms after joining Shen. Keywords soon connected into one line. Over 3 years as Aurora's secretary, he had taken nearly $30 million from the R&D budget in batches under names like technical consulting fees, expert advisory fees, and confidentiality compensation. Every payment carried Aurora's electronic signature. She had not read the forms carefully, because Caleb told her they were normal payments to external partners. I packaged and encrypted the evidence chain, sending it separately to the lawyer and Claire. Claire replied with only one line, "You calculated when he would move?" Within 3 days. Why? Because tomorrow morning, Shenyan Technology's first press conference will be held across the street from the Shen Group. At 10 the next morning, I held the press conference at the exhibition center 1 street away from the Shen Group Tower. Claire had released the news 3 days in advance. The entire industry waited to watch the show. The venue was full. Half were media. 30% were investors. The rest were industry peers who came after hearing the news. The first row seated partners from 3 investment institutions. Their checkbooks were already prepared. When I walked onto the stage, the audience went quiet for an instant. Someone recognized me and whispered, "He's the technical lead hidden by the Shen Group for 5 years?" I heard all 15 patents are his. The Shen Group's stock dropped another 12% last night. I stood before the microphone. Behind me, Shenyan Technology's logo slowly lit up. A seal script, yen, shaped like a circuit board. No flashy light show. No long leader speeches. I went straight to the point. Today's press conference has only one purpose. Shenyan Technology officially begins operations. The core technical architecture consists of 15 independently invented patents. All rights holders are Adrian Jean. Shutters sounded like rain. I switched to the second slide. It listed the original application date, authorization date, and inventor name of all 15 patents. The inventor column had the same name across every line. Adrian Jean. Every word was true. No one could fake it. Each item had screenshots from official intellectual property records. When the third slide lit up, the murmuring below turned into gasps. It was a screenshot from an internal Shen Group technical evaluation report. It clearly read, "Core algorithm owner, Adrian Jean. Shen Group holds only usage rights." The signing date was 2 years earlier. Shenyan Technology is not a Shen Group branch, I said, looking at the audience. It is not a Shen Group competitor either. We are an independent technical entity. These 15 patents were previously licensed to the Shen Group. Now that authorization has been terminated. Starting today, any partner who needs to use these technologies may contact us directly. Someone raised a hand. "Mr. Jean, the Shen Group previously said Caleb Gu was the technical lead. What do you think of that?" I smiled faintly, lowered my head to arrange the files on the lectern, then looked up again with a calm expression. "That depends on how they explain it themselves." During the press conference, Claire handed me a note from the side stage. Only one line was written on it: "Caleb Gu has been stopped at the airport. Economic Crime Investigation Division." I read it and quietly slipped it into my pocket, then continued answering questions from the audience. But in that instant, I felt the string that had been pulled tight in my chest for 5 years loosen by one notch. Caleb could not leave. The Shen Group's accounts would soon be opened. Even if Aurora wanted to protect him, she could not. After the press conference, Claire and I sat in the backstage lounge. She poured 2 cups of tea and pushed one to me. "Details from the airport are out. Caleb booked a flight to Vancouver this afternoon. His luggage had already been checked. He was invited into an office during security screening. The investigators had a search warrant. His laptop and phone were sealed. Does Aurora know? She probably just received the news." Claire took a sip of tea. "I heard she didn't go to the company today. The board suspended her and asked her to cooperate with the investigation. The CFO is acting president. Her mother was hospitalized last night from anger. The old chairman has flown back from Hainan." I slowly turned the cup in my hand. Steam rose and blurred the Shenyang Technology logo on the opposite wall. This was not the game I had wanted from the beginning. I only wanted to take back what was mine and push those who tried to steal it into the abyss along the way. Adrian Jean. Claire set down her cup. Her tone became more serious. Do you regret it? I did not look at her. My gaze fell on the ripples in the tea. Regret what? Regret not leaving 5 years ago. I took 10 full seconds to think about it. Then I finished the last sip of tea and placed the cup on the wooden table. The sound was light. I regret it. But not because I helped her. I regret helping someone who was not worth it. News of Caleb's arrest appeared on Financial News. The wording was cautious. Suspected occupational embezzlement. Related to Shen Group internal funds. Subject to compulsory measures according to law. But the rumors online were far more colorful. Someone dug out his career path in the Shen Group. From President's Secretary to Chief Technology Officer, it had taken him less than 3 years. The fastest promotion in the Shen Group's history. Someone else found a photo from the celebration banquet. Caleb standing beside Aurora, his palm resting at her waist. Caption: technical backbone, or pillow side favorite. One comment rose to the top: Aurora Shen bet wrong. She chose a vase over the man who built her kingdom. I swiped past the comment and put the phone down. Outside the office window, deep autumn sunlight spread across the city. Roofs reflected broken gold. The Shen Group tower stood not far away. From my angle, it looked like a concrete pillar with its top snapped off, gray and dull against the skyline. At 2 in the afternoon, old Chairman Shen personally came to visit. He did not make an appointment through Claire. He drove himself over. A 10-year-old black Audi stopped at the Creative Park entrance. Security initially refused to let him in, so he called me. I told security to let him enter. Old Chairman Shen came upstairs with a cane. Not because he truly needed it. Because he was used to using it as presents. At 71, his hair was entirely white, but his back remained straight. He wore a dark gray Chinese tunic suit, the cuffs buttoned neatly. When he entered the office, he did not look around. He walked straight to the chair opposite me and sat. The cane leaned against his knee. His hands folded over its head. Adrian. His voice was steady. Not like Aurora's mother crying over the phone. I want to discuss a transaction with you. I poured water for myself. None for him. Go ahead. The Shen Group now has only 1/10 of its peak market value. Bank credit lines are frozen. Suppliers are canceling orders. Government projects have been suspended. This morning, the board voted to suspend Aurora from all duties. She will not participate in operational decisions for now. Caleb Gu is in custody. The investigation shows part of the RD funds he misappropriated flowed into companies under his name. Aurora's electronic signature is indeed on those documents. We will cooperate with the investigation. What should be recovered will be recovered. What should be pursued will be pursued. She failed to judge people. That is her responsibility. The Shen family admits it. When he said the words, "the Shen family admits it," his cane lifted slightly and dropped again, as if emphasizing something. I waited for him to continue. He looked up. Beneath his gray-white brows, his cloudy eyes still held sharpness. Adrian, this old man did not come to beg your forgiveness. The Shen family wronged you. That fact cannot be overturned by anyone. I came to make a deal beneficial to both sides. What deal? The Shen Group will separate the ownership of its core products and transfer it all to you. 3 production lines, current inventory, client channels, and brand authorization. After taking them, you can integrate them or liquidate them. In exchange, you're licensed the 15 patents to a Shen-affiliated company. But that company's personnel and management rights belong to you. The Shen Group retains only dividend rights. I set down my water cup. You want to dismantle the Shen Group and hand it to me? Not hand. Stop loss. Old Chairman Shen was very direct. The Shen Group cannot hold anymore. Some on the board want bankruptcy liquidation. Some want to sell assets at a low price. But the most valuable parts of these assets were built on your foundation. Rather than letting them rot in others' hands, better to return them to the original owner. His expression held no pleading. It was more like an asset disposal proposal. This honesty carried more weight than Aurora's tears. What about Aurora? I asked. Old Chairman Shen's gaze darkened. She is at the hospital with her mother. Once your conditions are set, she will make a formal public statement to the media. She will admit the false patent ownership claims over the past 5 years. After that, she wants to leave the country for a while. Caleb's matter is enough for her to digest. Caleb was only the final straw, I said. You understand better than I do how many of the Shen Group's decisions these years were truly hers, and how many were led by him. The old man remained silent for a long time. Sunlight moved half an inch through the window, making his white hair almost transparent. Finally, he spoke, his voice lower. She has been stubborn since childhood. She hated being told she lived off her father's generation. In the Shen Group's hardest years, she could not sleep day or night. Later, with you there, she finally felt she could keep the situation stable. But she was too afraid people would say she relied on a man. So she desperately tried to prove the Shen Group was built by herself. The stronger you were, the more she wanted to hide you. Caleb saw that clearly. He coaxed her into lifting him up, and she pushed you into the shadows. The cane touched the cement floor lightly. These years, you suffered. The Shen family's debt and gratitude are clear in this old man's heart. The office was quiet for a while. I walked to the window and looked at the Shen Group tower from a distance. Sunlight reflected off its glass facade, painfully bright. I accept the asset split plan. I turned back. But I have 3 conditions. Old Chairman Shen lifted his head. First, in the criminal part of Caleb Gu's case, the Shen Group must not provide any false testimony to reduce his responsibility. The money he took must be recovered in full. Agreed. Second, Aurora Shen's public statement must be issued before Shenyan Technology's formal financing announcement. The timing will be determined by us. The wording will be reviewed by us. Agreed. Third, I paused. The engagement ring is with me. The betrothal gifts and other engagement-related property will be listed by my people later. You take them back. I will keep nothing. Old Chairman Shen's fingers tightened around the cane. Then loosened. This condition touched him more than the first 2. But he said nothing else. Only nodded. Fine. He stood with his cane. At the door, he paused but did not turn back. Adrian, you are capable. The Shen family missed you. That is the Shen family's fate. Walk your own path from now on. You no longer need to think of old affection for us. The door closed gently. I returned to my desk. Sunlight fell across the surface. A pothose plant Claire had sent earlier had leaves rimmed with gold. I touched my ring finger. The skin there was cool. The mark had faded almost completely. Old Chairman Shen was more efficient than I expected. 3 days later, the Shen Group issued a formal announcement. Former President Aurora Shen had resigned from all positions due to personal reasons. The board authorized the CFO to temporarily manage the company. Asset restructuring procedures began simultaneously. That afternoon, Shenyan Technology's official website published Aurora's public statement in full. It had her handwritten signature and a notary stamp from a law firm. The statement was clear: the 15 core patents were independently developed by Adrian Jean. The Shen Group had never owned inventor rights. Caleb Gu's so-called technical leadership during his tenure at the Shen Group was an internal publicity position inconsistent with fact. The Shen Group deeply apologized for improperly using Adrian Jin's attribution rights over the past 5 years and diminishing his contribution. That night, my social account received more than 1,000 messages. Former colleagues from Shen annual meetings. Technical peers in the industry. Partners who had once been rejected by the Shen Group. All appeared. Some congratulated me. Some sighed emotionally. Some cautiously asked if we could schedule a cooperation discussion. I replied to a few important ones and swiped past the rest. Claire sat across from me eating late-night food, scrolling through online reactions. Every so often, she laughed. Look at this comment. Caleb Gu was CTO for 1 week and then got arrested. Aurora Shen's eye for talent is truly poisonous. She finished reading and pushed her phone toward me. I did not take it. I continued eating the noodles in my bowl. There was a Lanzhou noodles shop at the park entrance. The owner was from the Northwest. The noodles were chewy and strong. For 5 years, I had rarely eaten late-night meals. After the stomach bleeding incident, Aurora had the kitchen prepare special bland meals for me. So bland they had no taste. Now, sitting on this small stool and eating a steaming bowl of beef noodles with 2 spoons of chili oil, sweat broke out on my forehead. Did you read tomorrow's financing conference schedule? Claire asked, taking a bite of cold vegetables. Yes. The first row will have partners from 3 institutions. The lead investor for the second round will sign on site. You don't need to discuss too many technical details. What they value more is your industry position and the result of the Shen Group battle. I swallowed the noodles and looked up. Claire won. 5 years ago you said I would regret it. How did you know? She froze briefly, then smiled. The noodle shop's light was warm yellow. It softened the usual sharpness on her face. Because I have seen similar things. When resources, power, and emotion are tangled together, the one who cannot bear to let go is always the one who loses. Back then, you could not let go of Aurora Shen. So you would lose. Now you can. So you will win. You sound like you've never lost. She set down her chopsticks and thought seriously. I have lost. But I don't remember it. She picked up her chopsticks again. The noodles are getting cold. Eat. The next morning, the financing press conference was held in the same exhibition center. The venue was twice as large as before. Flower baskets from partners filled the entrance. 10 days after Shenyan Technology's official founding, its valuation rose from 1.2 billion to 2 billion. 80 million in startup funds entered the account. The team expanded from 4 people to 26. When I stood on stage explaining the technical roadmap, it felt completely different from before. Last time, I had stood in shadow, watching someone else steal my achievements. This time, I stood in light. 300 pairs of eyes below clearly watched me, listened to me, and believed me. Someone asked, Mr. Jean, after the Shen Group incident, what advice do you have for technical professionals making career choices? I thought for a moment. 3 words. Keep evidence. The audience laughed. I'm not joking, I said. All RD logs, email exchanges, timestamps, version records save them. You may respect your partners and trust collaboration. But first, respect your own labor. This is not suspicion. It is a bottom line. After the conference, I removed my tie in the backstage lounge. The door opened slightly. The buzz-cut man poked half his head in. Engineer Jean, someone wants to see you. She says she came to return something. My hand paused while loosening the tie. Let her in. The door fully opened. Aurora stood there. She wore a white knit sweater, jeans, and flat shoes. No heels. No gown. No delicate eyeliner or lipstick. Her hair was casually tied into a low ponytail. Strands were messy from the wind. It was the first time in 5 years I had seen her without any Shen Group president armor. In her hand was a dark blue velvet box. She walked over, placed it on the coffee table, and gently pushed it toward me. The ring, she said. I looked at the box. I did not open it. Aurora sat opposite me with both hands clasped on her knees. She did not cry. Her eyes were dry. Only the dark shadows beneath them were deep, as if she had not slept for days. The statement has been posted. The asset split contract has been signed. My mother was discharged today. All the conditions my father discussed with you are moving forward. Caleb's case, the investigators talked to me 3 times. I provided every document I signed. He may be sentenced to more than 5 years. Her voice was flat when she said this, as if discussing someone else's matter. I leaned back and looked at her. At this moment, there was no performance in Aurora. No pulling. No testing. She only sat there and said what needed to be said. Adrian. She raised her eyes. I did not come to ask for forgiveness. I came to say thank you. That is sincere. I know what you did for the Shen Group in those 5 years. I always knew. I refused to admit it. People make mistakes, I said. But some mistakes are not worth forgiving. I stayed silent for a while. What will you do next? She lowered her head and looked at her hands. The ring on her ring finger had been removed. A faint pale circle remained. I'll go abroad for a while. My mother wants me to clear my mind. The board thinks I shouldn't appear publicly in the short term. I think I should leave for a while too. Learn again how to be a person. When she stood, her legs trembled slightly. Then she steadied herself. Adrian Jean, I wish you everything good from now on. I did not stand to send her off. When she reached the door, she paused and turned her head to look at the clock on the lounge wall. 3:47 p.m. That time had no special meaning. She merely looked once. Then she opened the door and left. The sound of her flat shoes faded down the corridor, swallowed by the noise of the exhibition center. 1 month later, Shenyang Technology held its new park opening ceremony. The address was in the core area of the southern high-tech zone, 7 streets away from the Shen Group Tower. The park was not huge. 2 buildings and a central garden. But for a tech company established only a month earlier, the scale already drew attention in the industry. That day, more than 200 people came. Investors, partners, media, and several old colleagues from the Shen Group. I wore a dark gray suit and stood on the steps in the central garden for the ribbon cutting. When the scissors fell, the red ribbon snapped with a crisp sound. The 2 ends drifted apart. Like applause delayed for 5 years. Claire stood on my left. Behind me were 26 core team members. The buzz-cut man had specially worn a white shirt. The man with glasses still carried his notebook, ready to write down parameters at any moment. During the team photo, someone shouted, "Engineer Gene, stand in the middle." I stood at the center. Sunlight fell from above. My shadow landed straight on the steps behind me. At the moment the shutter clicked, I suddenly remembered the last row of the celebration banquet. The silver ice bucket full of ice. The ring falling in with a soft ding. Back then, I did not even have a chair. Now I stood in a park I built myself, with an entire team behind me. After the evening ended, I stood alone in the central garden for a long time. The deep autumn night wind carried the scent of osmanthus flowers over the park wall. The overhead lights made the path warm and soft. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Claire had sent a message. "Congratulations, Mr. Gene. The first round of data is out. Guess how much Shenyang Technology earned from licensing this month alone?" I replied with a question mark. She sent a string of numbers. 34 million. I looked at that number and smiled. 5 years ago, my monthly salary at the Shen Group was 28,000. And even then, everyone treated me as Aurora Shen's fiancé, not Adrian Gene. Now, not 1 cent of this 34 million needed to be shared with the Shen family. Nor did I need to stand in anyone's shadow. I put the phone back into my pocket and turned toward the office building. Passing through the first-floor lobby, my eyes caught the inscription on the wall, Shenyang Technology, founded 2026. Below it was a line Claire had added, "When a person's name is loud enough, he no longer needs to hide behind anyone." I stared at the line for several seconds and gently wiped it with my fingertips. Nothing came off. It had already been engraved. Inside the office, the lights were bright. The team was still working overtime. The buzz-cut man was gesturing at a waveform diagram. The man with glasses sat beside him, typing rapidly. The keyboard sounds cracked like tireless rain. When I walked in, no one looked up. Someone shouted, "Engineer Gene, come look at this convergent speed." I set down my coat and leaned over the screen. The load peak still has some aftershock fluctuation, but it's much better than last week. Try lowering the threshold by 0.05. Got it. When I straightened, the whole city was lit beyond the window. High rises stood everywhere. Countless lights filled the night. The Shen Group Tower also had lights, but it was distant and small now, mixed into the larger nightscape, no different from any other building. I walked back to the window and stood for a while. The glass reflected my appearance. 35. Short hair. Calm eyes. A faint curve at the corner of my mouth I had not even noticed. The dark blue velvet box was still in my pocket. The ring Aurora returned remained unopened. Maybe one day I would melt it down. Or donate it. Or simply leave it somewhere. It no longer mattered. Like everything stolen and then recovered, the most satisfying part was not where the object ended up. It was the act of taking it back. On the desk, the pothose had sprouted new leaves. Tender green shoots curled out from the vine nodes. I touched one gently with my fingertip. My phone vibrated again. This time, it was my lawyer. "Mr. Gene, Caleb Gu's judgment is out. 7 years in prison. 28 million in stolen funds recovered. Additional fine, 3 million. All supplementary materials from the Shen Group's internal investigation have been filed." I replied, "Okay." Then I placed the phone on the desk. When the screen went dark, it reflected my final faint shadow. Outside, night wind blew again, carrying osmanthus fragrance and the sound of distant traffic. I pulled out the chair, sat down, opened the computer, and opened the new project file. 3rd generation technical architecture, bottom level reconstruction plan. The cursor blinked at the top of the document, waiting for the first word. When I typed the first line, every light in Shenyang technology was still on. That's all for today's story. Remember to subscribe and leave a comment.